workshop. Robert?
Mayor, we have 3 items for you today for discussion purposes. The first is discussion of our 2018 federal and state legislative agendas. I'm going to turn it over to Ken Evans to talk about the agendas and to introduce our other speakers.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. We have the federal agenda for you first. We're going to try and breeze through this and hit the highlights, but we want your input. So even if you're not able to give us your input today during the workshop, we definitely want to get your input into the final document before we bring it back for final adoption later in a December meeting. Jim Davenport is on the line from DC, and he's going to handle most of the presentation, but I will help where I can in answering questions. So Jim, if you can take it over and just refer to page numbers as you're going through things so everybody can follow where you are.
Will do. Thank you, Ken. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. Again, it's Jim Davenport with Alcalde and Fay. Ken and I and the city manager and your staff have been working on putting together the 2018 federal agenda. Ken reached out to several members of your staff to ask for input. We use the current 2017 agenda as our starting point. Many of the things that you have on your current agenda are still on this agenda with some modifications and so forth. So I will start at the beginning on page 1 with the Equus beds reauthorization. We are still seeking to get that legislation approved. This current year, Senators Moran and Roberts reintroduced legislation S703. It's the same as the previous bill. The bill got through the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, so it is essentially ready for action on the Senate floor. And that action could come any time from the remainder of this year until next year. Their likely way to get it approved would be to attach it to a larger bill with similar items that Congress could, take up a little bit easier than a standalone bill. The challenge still remains also getting it through the House. There were some issues raised previously with whether it triggered the earmark moratorium, but again, I think if it's on a moving vehicle, we're in a better position. So we are continuing to work closely. Senators Moran and Roberts have really taken an active lead on that to get that bill passed so we can go back to the Bureau with a reauthorized project extension and then seek funding. The next item on page 3, the Federal Aviation Administration reauthorization bill is still due to be passed by Congress. They have extended current FAA law until next March. There are, there are some challenges with the House bill. Chairman Bill Schuster is trying to privatize air traffic control operations. The city of Wichita opposes that, obviously, because of the detrimental impact to your general aviation businesses and industry. So we are opposing that portion of the Schuster bill. We are working to increase the PFCs, the passenger facility charges. Good news on that front, it's not in the authorization bill, but the Senate Transportation Appropriations bill included that increase for fiscal year 18. Now, whether that makes it into appropriations legislation, I don't know, but that would only last for a year if it was actually approved. So the reauthorization bill is much more important for that policy. In addition, your airport is looking to pursue a discretionary grant for the general aviation ramp at the airport. We will assist you in any way we can in getting that funded. There are some other issues in here. On page 4, you'll see some stuff at the bottom regarding the TSA personnel. Those issues are currently, those are hot-button issues as of last week, especially the law enforcement officer reimbursement program. TSA was saying they were going to run out of money for the program. They have since changed that position for the short term. So there's a number of aviation items coming up for 2018, and we will stay on top of those.
Jim, let me interrupt, Mayor Long.
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor. Absolutely.
Going back to the privatization, is some of the fear that if they privatize, we know it'll impact what we think would be, general aviation to the point where they may even close down some of the control towers in smaller airports and try and run those from regional areas,
Yeah.
which might impact general aviation obviously the most.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood.
Yeah, I and if I recall, I think former Congressman Pompeo wrote a very nice op-ed piece 2 years ago on the impacts to Wichita and Kansas, I think. And that was if I can find that, I can resend that back to you, but he probably had some more specific items in there as well about the impacts.
Very good. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Continue on.
Yep. Let's see. On to page 5, the Amtrak extension. And I've talked to Council Member Meissner about this, and I appreciate his work on this. I think I've encapsulated the latest. I believe right now, Kansas, if I recall, and I don't know if the council member is there.
He's here.
That they've pledged $1 million towards Colorado's Tiger Grant for the Southwest Chief. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Kansas pledged, yes.
So we're here to support any efforts that the city wants to undertake towards the extension. Councilmember, you and I have had meetings at Amtrak. The mayor and I sat with Amtrak this past March as well. I think the state of Kansas still at some point is going to need to send a letter to Amtrak along with the other interested states to express their interest and commitment toward the project. But I'm on standby to do whatever you need me to do, and I'll keep relaying to you any potential problems I see with Amtrak funding in the future.
I appreciate that, Jim.
Sure.
That last Tiger Grant that Kansas was participating in, that's the third of 3 that would finally complete all the track improvements on the Southwest Chief, mainly in the Colorado, New Mexico area. But since Colorado, New Mexico participated in helping fix Kansas, this is the third of 3, and then it'd be over.
Okay, very good. Page 6, the transportation infrastructure items here. We're on, it's still the implementation phase of the FAST Act. We're actually a couple years away from the next transportation bill. Let me step back for a second. As it relates to an infrastructure package, which would be likely separate from this, that's still a very nebulous concept here in Washington. This morning I just read a recent article about how the administration is now talking about welfare reform as the next big item once the tax bill passes, and assuming it does pass. So this concept of infrastructure is still out there. They're talking about it, but I'm not seeing any real movement towards doing something on it at this point, but we'll continue to stay attuned to that. As it relates to implementation of the FAST Act, there will be fast lane grants, which the administration has renamed infra grants this coming year. There's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it's $950 million in infra grants for regional projects dealing with freight and highway large projects. You might want to take a look at that. We will continue to provide you any grant opportunities available and let you know of any major changes to transportation policy that might impact you all. Page 8, economic development. EDA remains to be a very a good working partner for both grant opportunities and other opportunities. I don't know if you all recall, we've talked to EDA about their program that's called America's Competitive Exchange, or the ACE program, which they run jointly with the State Department and the Organization of American States. That's where you could invite in potential, our businesses from other countries for potential future partnerships. They have talked about possibly doing one in your area, and I think we should stay attuned to that. And if it's something you want to pursue, to my recollection, you need to write a letter to the State Department expressing your interest. I know we've talked about that in the past. So I'm just laying that out there for your consideration. Any trade policy that we see that might impact you, we will let you know about it. And of course, please continue to dialogue with me as well. Page 9, dealing with the ozone precursor credits and items related to emissions. There's a couple of new bullets in there at the beginning that your staff assisted me with. Potentially this coming year, next year, when you come to Washington, we have not done the EPA meeting, but it might be something you want to consider, just to tell them what you're doing and your strategies, your public outreach strategies. So I'm just going to lay that out there, and you might find currently a friendlier EPA towards your efforts. So that's just something to think about. Page 11, waters of the U.S. Actually caught a mistake in my first bullet, and I will change that. It should be 2017. It says 207. There was a Federal Register notice actually last, I think it was Friday, which I just caught yesterday when I got back to the office. They are basically extending the current law for the time being until they work out the new law. They're rewriting the law that the Obama administration wrote, and they're basically saying we're going to hold the status quo for another 2 years. So we will continue to monitor the rewrite to the Clean Water Rule, and suggest that once that's out, that you submit comments if you have some major concerns with the new rule. Page 12, funding for city services. The Congress needs to redo the budget deal that will set the both discretionary and the non-discretionary or defense caps for the next 2 fiscal years. They have to redo that primarily because of the tax bills that they're moving, and I won't get into the weeds on that. But so we need to continue to protect the programs that are important to you, and those programs will be funded or debated during the annual appropriations process for FY19. So we've listed here all the programs that are generally of importance to the city. I know on occasion you'll get some notice from National League of Cities or other organizations showing you that one of these is targeted for elimination in a congressional, in an amendment or something else. We are always on top of those. But if you're hearing something, please let us know. I'm not going to go through all of these. These are all the general programs here that you're fairly familiar with. Page 17. You might ask yourself why we don't have all those tax items that we've been talking about so recently on here. We can certainly add those. This agenda is intended for 2018, and if the tax bill is finalized before Christmas, and not knowing how it's going to play out, we probably will need to modify this page to some regard. We are advocating for various tax provisions that you are both in support of, and concerned with, and I've been communicating fairly regularly with your staff over the past month on that. So we will modify this page to reflect what we need to do in the coming year on any tax issues based on what's happening now. And I think I've done that in 15 minutes as I was asked to. So if you have any questions, I'm here for you.
Mayor, council, and manager, any questions? Anything you want to discuss?
Jim, this is James Clendenin. I'm not sure if you would be able to answer this question or our city manager, but under the waters of the U.S., we have had some potential upgrades we were going to have to make to some of our waste treatment plants. Would that affect us being mandated to do so, or?
Well, yeah, I don't know exactly what you were doing, but that was the real issue for a number of cities. Is they were already making changes based on previous law, and then the new law had them concerned that they were then going to go out and have to spend additional dollars. Right now, we are in the status quo from original law that's been, current law. Nothing's changed. Because the waters of the U.S. rule right now is just, it's basically stopped. So I don't know, wherever you were in the last couple of years, you should still be in that same area. But we do need to look at the new rule when it's put out, and you're going to have to really take a hard look at it and see whether what you're doing now is going to meet the potentially new criteria.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Just one real quick, Mayor. On your page 6, Jim, this is Pete. I'm also.
Yep.
We have about 4 of us participate on our local MPO.
Right.
And so that first bullet, the TAP program, is that, I'm going to assume I should run this by our MPO and make sure that we're supporting this. It looks something that I would support.
Okay.
Is there MPO feedback around the country that you're hearing on this that's positive?
Yeah, I think I don't know that I'm hearing any concerns over it. Let me put it that way. I don't know that I'm getting any positive responses from anybody, but I'm not also getting any concerns that I can recall.
Okay.
Yeah, but council member, that might be a good idea to run that by them, see if they have any issues.
Well, because we have a federal representation at our MPO also, and he's pretty sharp and gives us the federal perspective report. I just want to make sure we're all. I mean, this looks like it could be an opportunity for the MPOs from what I'm seeing.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Sure
Get
thing.
back with you.
Okay.
Just obviously what you said, update the last page, the tax page, because there are several programs that we want to continue to try and lobby in favor of.
Sure.
But
I can do that.
I think our position is a little unique here in the Midwest also.
Right.
All right, nothing else? We'll move on. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council.
Thank you for all your help, Jim.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Bob.
I think we'll be fine, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you, you too.
He's been a real help. He's been a real help.
Yeah, very much.
Huge help.
This is Kimberly.
Hi, Kimberly. This is Ken Evans. Just stand by and we'll start the state workshop, okay?
Okay, that's good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to, as we dive into the draft state legislative agenda, I just want to introduce Marley Carpenter, who's here in person with Bright and Carpenter Consulting, and Kimberly Swati joins us by phone, who is part of the joint venture that supports us in Topeka. Kimberly is from the firm Genscher Swati Public Affairs, and they work very well together. So you want to just dive into the agenda,
Sure.
Marley?
I will just dive in. I'm going to lower the microphone just a bit. Thank you for having me here today. And just as a general overview of the 2018 session, we were very hopeful it would be a quiet, short legislative session. Last year, as you know, the legislature passed a pretty large income tax increase to support both education and the budget. The Kansas Supreme Court did come down with a ruling that said the amount of money that was allocated for schools was not enough. So the legislature has to deal with additional school funding next session. With the large income tax increase and sales tax in some parts of the state at over 10%, the legislature is going to have to look at some other funding options if they do want to fund schools next year, and to what extent are they going to fund schools next year. We believe that this will be the all-consuming legislative issue for next session, and we were hoping for a short session, but it does not look like a short session. 2018 is an election year for all House members as well as statewide offices. I'm sure you have seen the long list of people running for the governor on the Republican side as well as the Democrat side. There's also a growing list of other candidates for statewide office as well as a congressional delegation. So there will be a lot of discussion about the elections, and many of those items will play into the politics of the session as well. I'm going to dive into the legislative agenda, and I'm just going to touch on a few key issues, and if you have any questions about issues that I don't touch on or anything you need me to elaborate on more, please let me know. The first item is economic development STAR bonds. As you know, STAR bonds were renewed for a one-year renewal last year. There is an interim that will happen next week that will dive into STAR bonds more. They will look at the STAR bonds program as a whole. We will be lobbying, and we lobbied much on this issue last year to hold the cities who already have STAR bonds projects in the pipeline so that they can continue those STAR bonds projects. We'll continue to work with the legislators on this issue, but we do expect some legislation to tighten up STAR bonds in the future.
I do want to mention here that it was very helpful to have the mayor and others of you up in Topeka testifying on behalf of STAR bonds so that they are aware of the major projects that are in the pipeline here.
Yes, and some of those one-on-one conversations with legislators I think were very helpful, specifically in the Senate. Moving on to body cameras under emergency services. This is a key transparency goal for the police chief to create a level playing field across the state. And so we're going to look for opportunities next legislative session to work on this goal. Looking at tax and finance, the payment under protest is an issue that the Kansas League of Municipalities has brought forward. This would require any payment that is made to local governments under protest, so the local government is notified of that payment under protest. So if the Court of Tax Appeals comes back and says those payments need to be reversed and refunded, the city does have notice of that and they are not caught off guard. This is a League of Municipalities issue. We will be supporting that. As you know, the mayor is president of the league this year, and we wanted our agendas to align with them as much as possible. Looking under the general government operations, the designating Sedgwick County as an urban area. Sedgwick County has proposed a statutory change to become an urban area. The city is concerned with this uncertainty in the proposal and would like a local discussion and consensus before legislation is introduced. Moving on to public works and utilities.
Can you give me a little better definition of urban area?
What it would do is it would statutorily state that Sedgwick County is an urban area. There are pros and cons to it. Johnson County is designated as an urban area, and one of the pros that they see is there's some additional dollars that can come down from that. Some of the cons is some of the uncertainty that the urban area can act in lieu of the city.
Does it put more regulations? Like what kind of regulations in general?
It depends on what the intent and purpose is of the county in moving this forward. And I'd suggest you have those conversations with your counterparts across the street, because I think we need to, at least from staff's point of view, we need to understand a bit more about their intent for this. There are a couple other counties, I think Wyandotte County has done this, but they're a unified government. So
doesn't it, in a sense, give the county home rule authority, basically?
On some issues,
Right.
Yes.
Which they've been fighting for forever.
yes, they currently have statutory home rule. Cities have constitutional home rule.
Thanks.
Other questions on any of those items I have mentioned or have not mentioned?
Or anything else.
Yes. Moving on to Public Works and Utilities, and I'm going to turn that over to Kimberly.
Kimberly, are you
Sorry.
still, there you go. Just speak
Sorry
up.
about that.
Speak up if you can.
Okay, absolutely. Well, good morning, everyone. I apologize for not being able to be there in person. We have a brand new little baby, and I wasn't able to find child care, unfortunately, this morning. I do apologize for that. So this coming session, we'll probably be working on a couple of things. It is likely that the wireless carriers, led this time not by Sprint, but potentially by T-Mobile, who is in the process, as you know, of potentially buying Sprint, coming back and looking at the wireless micro-siting, the tower siting issue. So no legislation has been put forth, no language has been put forth. This is just conversation that I know is occurring within some of the wireless carriers. So I'll be watching very closely for that, unless of course the word comes down from leadership that this in fact is not going to be the year for them to continue to pursue their wireless siting goals. Probably the biggest issue, and it's one that we worked on extensively last legislative session, related to the water plan fund. And as you recall, there was several attempts last session to double the fees on municipal water users in order to help fund the state water plan fund. As you know, the legislature has not funded it in the past.
Appropriate.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We were doing so well. And then
Policy
the
makes
wheel
us
came
want
off.
to cry also. Go ahead.
I agree. As you know, the state has not funded the water plan in the last basically 10 years. And so they are down about $10 million, or I'm sorry, about $80 million in lost funds. And so the legislature is looking to figure out a way to reinfuse money into the water plan fund. And so we'll continue to have that conversation this legislative session about how in fact we're going to do that. The other issue that could impact municipal water supply relates to just how we fund K-12 education. As you recall, at the end of last legislative session, we were very involved in saving off an effort that would impose a $3 fee per month on every electric, natural gas, and water customer in the state. So each one of your constituents would receive every month a $3 increase times 3, so $9 a month for each one of those particular utility services. So we'll be watching that very closely, again, as a potential way to solve the budget issue, well, the K-12 issue. In fact, they got so far as contemplating the language that would be on customers' bills. It would say K-12 education funding, and that would be a new line item that each community would have to put on their bill. And in some communities, that then would change the bill format and potentially add an additional page. And the whole thing was very cumbersome and going to be very costly to our ratepayers. So watching that very closely. And then one last piece of legislation on the, two other pieces of legislation real quick. One is going to be a potential change to service territory that's more on the electric side, but we know that once it's introduced, it would bleed over to the water side. Deb Airy is currently the president of Kansas Municipal Utilities. And so we're working on that one very closely to make sure that, one, nothing is introduced, hopefully, but that, two, if it is, it really stays on the electric side and does not bleed into the water side. And then the last issue is an issue that the city of Wichita really worked hard on last year, and that's related to the ground water management district fees. GMD2 was interested in taking the cap off of the fee that they can charge, and then potentially charging customers that are outside GMG2 that still utilize their services even more, and that would have a pretty significant financial impact on the city of Wichita. So we are watching their efforts closely, and if something were to move forward on that, we have some very specific language that we would like to see included. So you would think that they had nothing else to do, given the list of just things that they're looking at on the utility side. But we hope to have a very productive session this year in staving all of these things off.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you, and sorry for the distraction.
You're fine.
Finally, moving on to transportation, I want to emphasize two items. The license plate bill, we are working on language at the State House to support the passage of a flag vanity plate to raise revenue for the Wichita Parks Foundation. We have been working with the council as well as the reviser to come up with language, and have been in contact with some of the South Central delegation to get that bill introduced. The final item is bicycle safety. There's some language to clean up bicycle safety laws. And with that, I'm happy to answer any question on any of the items on the list or about the legislative session in general.
So one of the things I would encourage us to do, and this also goes back to our federal agenda also, I know that we have a number of projects, economic development projects that we have underway that utilizes job training grants. And I don't know where the state is on, at one time they were talking about cutting back, what do they call their job training grants?
We do have a plank for workforce training that
Right.
on the agenda right now. We do expect that as they're looking for money again,
That they may eliminate.
the usual
those.
targets will come up, and we will protect them with our partners.
What's the big one the state uses right now?
The job training fund, I don't know the specific name of it, but all of those economic development programs have come under attack in the last few years.
I can't think of it either. It's
Yes.
Yeah.
It's an acronym, fairly simple acronym like PIKE or
Not peak.
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 It's not peak, but all of those programs are being examined for their return on investment, as well
Right.
as the amount of dollars they put into it, just because of the education and budget issues.
And we'll work those issues very
Yes.
closely with.
So going back to the federal agenda
Yeah.
and pass this on to Jim,
Yeah.
there are concerns over the WIOA funding that we use for job training opportunities.
Okay.
And that continues to look like it's eroding too, so. I would make sure the state's programs aren't eroding, or if they are, we should be ready to, and poised to share our concerns with the jobs that we are
Right.
growing here.
Absolutely.
The efforts of Wichita State and Wichita Area Technical College and many other local training institutions are going to work with us and have in the past to protect those funds.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
a large coalition that is very interested in maintaining those dollars.
Perfect.
Also, we're doing, working with REAP to better coordinate the state and federal agendas for the city, the county, and then all of those other agencies, Workforce Alliance and others that are all supposed to be at the table, so that we're speaking with one voice on a number of common issues.
Councilmember Meister?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Marlon, good to see you again. Thanks for you and Kimberly's help last year and this year. Regarding the economic development, so we're supportive of all of the policies and opportunities that are there today. Why are we isolating the STAR bond as its separate support?
And we continue to be supportive of all the programs. The STAR Bond program is the one that has come under significant attack at the legislature, and it is the one that we have had to significantly put political capital in maintaining. The other programs are under attack, but not under attack at the same level as the STAR Bonds program.
Okay, so when the committees are looking at this, do they take comparable data that other states or other incentives in other states? Specifically, one that pops to me besides Texas is South Carolina has significant jobs that we've moved from Kansas to South Carolina based on aviation type stuff. Is there any research that's supplied to these, or do they just?
Yes, they do get a lot of that research, legislative research, conferees. We brought some of that information to them, so they have all of that. But in the realm of the legislative session and looking for additional dollars, sometimes that outweighs some of those priorities. We're very hopeful that we can continue to make the case, like we have in the past, to maintain those incentives and those dollars for jobs and economic development.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes.
Ken, some weeks ago I had mentioned to you an item that had been brought up by some downtown property owners, business concerns about regulations related to daycare centers.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if we had looked into that at all, or if you'd talked with any of our partners about that.
I had talked with Marley and with Kimberly about that. I don't know if we've had much follow-up. Some of our communications with our delegation have been less than they have been in previous years, just because everybody's been busy.
Okay.
So
Well, as evidenced by the crying baby on the phone,
exactly.
Which is not a distraction, but it brings to the forefront a significant issue that I've learned about, which is Wichita in general has a critical shortage of daycare. Right now, if you're expecting, you need to be on a list before your second trimester if you want to have a space in a accredited daycare before you give birth. And one of the challenges particularly related to that is that apparently there are some requirements for daycare, and maybe they're good requirements, I'm not sure. But they essentially eliminate or prohibit daycares from being in downtown areas. For example, let's just say Cargill wanted to have a daycare in its building. As the legislation, as I understand it's currently drafted, that would be difficult. We had one property owner who owns a multi-unit complex. He was very interested in starting a daycare and was not able to do that, again, because of some of the requirements. And as we grow both our residential numbers downtown as well as our corporate entities, and we're trying to recruit young and retain young professionals, specifically young women, if daycare continues to be a problem, that's going to just inhibit all those areas. And so I wanted to just throw that out as not necessarily saying let's add it today, but I think it's an issue that is worth exploring. Certainly we'd need to get in touch with experts in the field before we advocate for something that we don't necessarily know a lot about, but it did seem like an issue of importance.
We could definitely step up and prepare a memo based upon current law and what the partners believe is in the works.
Okay.
And put together a memo for you all in the meantime before you see this agenda.
So I'd be curious too what how that is described? Because I have not heard that daycares are banned from downtown.
They're not banned from downtown, but for example, right now you have to have a segregated outdoor playground area.
It's a difficulty with language, as I understand it, and I would think that would be fairly easy to clean up.
Right, so, the Envision space, they happened to have a courtyard that was segregated from all of their other adults in the building, and it's outdoors, so it worked out great. But a building, for example, like Cargill or the Lux or some of these other places don't necessarily have that. And maybe there's a good reason for that, and it's not a good idea to change that. However, if there is a way that we can work on that in a way that's still healthy for children, but gives more options for downtown workers and downtown residences, I think it would be helpful.
Ken, this is Kimberly, and interestingly enough, on this issue, a lot of those issues came about by way of a rules and regs change several years ago, probably 3 years ago, because I know in Ellsworth we had 3 daycare facilities, and then after the rules changed, every single one of them had to close. And it was they're not small, but they were very specific changes in the regulations. I don't necessarily know that it was even legislation. So we can, something that we might do is reach out to some of those expert organizations that deal in this area and ask them, what specifically was those reg changes were, and maybe start from there.
Thank you.
One question here. Ken, are we going to go back and look at the blight language, or is this another area that we want to focus on?
It remains on the agenda. We have updated the agenda because we had reached out to, I had asked our team to take another look at this. It seems that we spent a lot of political capital last year, and we're quite disappointed with, yet again, getting ready to come out of committee onto the Senate floor, and there was no will to do that on the committee. So we reached out to Wyandotte County, who had made the decision, okay, they're not going to spend as much political capital on this issue with the state legislature, but they're going to move in a different direction, and with land banking and some other things they can do under current law. So we have...
Yeah, and we do expect a blight bill to come back, and we will very closely follow it and monitor it, and at that time decide if that is something that we do want to support or not. But we wanted to explore some other options and avenues if state legislation was just not possible.
Absolutely. And I'm very pleased to see that there's a possibility of banning the box to go through legislation.
Yes, and we do expect a bill, a statewide bill on that.
That'd be great.
I think that's it, yes? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next item has to do with an update from the Mayor's Youth Council, and I'm not sure who's starting this off. Ian, are you going to?
Good morning, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Ian Hutchison. I'm the coordinator of this year's Mayor's Youth Council and a management fellow in the City Manager's Office. And with me here today is...
Hi, I'm Cousin Mayor of the Council. I'm Julia Cox. I'm a junior at Wichita Collegiate, and I am the Vice Mayor of the Council.
Rose Connolly, I serve as Council Clerk. I'm a senior at Southeast High School.
And today we're going to present to you some changes that have taken place on the Mayor's Youth Council this year, a bit about a new feature, the issue groups, and then G is going to speak a little bit about our trip at the National League of Cities City Summit in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I will speak to some administrative changes that have happened this year So as some of you are probably aware, last year, Mirror Inc., which was a substance abuse nonprofit, still is one, was lost as a partner to the Mayor's Youth Council. And along with that, left a full-time staff member who was a prevention coordinator who assisted my position as coordinator. And so this year, to help fill that vacuum, 2 new positions have been created. So the City Council Liaison position, which is filled by Laura Rainwater, and the Volunteer Coordinator, who is Brandon James. And so Laura's position as liaison is really to have someone who can be on the council from year to year, is a familiar face over the years, who can build up some institutional knowledge that is lost when my position rotates out. And so to just be kind of a stable presence on the council. And the volunteer coordinator, who is Brandon, has really been an invaluable kind of day-to-day assistant in managing all aspects of the council, from developing and planning meetings to overseeing these issue groups, to planning for the future of the organization. So both Brandon and Laura have been really instrumental in filling the gap that was left when Mira left.
In addition to the administrative changes, there have been some structural changes to the council. In previous years, the council had been composed of 3 standing committees, which were the Legislative, Prevention, and Youth Affairs committees. And over time, we found these to be very static and not flexible enough to allow for the qualities that were needed to make the Mayor's Youth Council meaningful to its members. So we created the issue groups in place of the committee groups, and they were voted on by us. And in the circle, those are some issues that we thought of at the beginning that we wanted to help tackle in the community. And then we chose 4 out of the issues. And these groups are formed at the beginning of every year, and they can be new or they can carry over from previous years. And the council votes on them to choose which groups they would like to make. And ideally, we would like 3 to 5 groups at a time, but that's completely fluid. The groups are led by chairs or co-chairs who are voted into their positions by the group members. And this year is the first year with the issue groups, and it's turned out to work really well. And I think the council as a whole has benefited from the change into the issue groups instead of the committees.
This year's group are education, environment, mental health, and women's rights. Each group focuses on key projects that will promote their platform on the issue. Education focuses on promoting literacy on young children. Projects include reading to a group of children and setting up little free library throughout the city. Environment works to create greener Wichita, placing recycling in key spot and building a garden. Mental health wants to create a platform for students to speak their mind on mental health that are important to them. And the purpose of having a mental health issue in our council is to spread awareness of the idea across Wichita. Women's rights focus on awareness of women issue and combating domestic violence. They are planning a Fight for Film event connecting different group of focus on women issue and holding a discussion on gender equality and violence against women.
So before the holidays, myself, Anya, and Maitri were given the opportunity to attend the National League of Cities Conference in Charlotte, North Carolina. My favorite part of the NLC experience was the comfort. Being surrounded by youth as driven and politically aware as the rest of us was very inspiring, and knowing that there are councils and youth across the country who are involved as we are was very awesome. There was never a time you had to search for someone to sit by or someone to speak to. Everyone was really collaborative, and it was just really comfortable and exciting. So during our time in Charlotte, we heard a variety of elected officials and public servants speak, such as Gabby Giffords, Joan Higginbottom, and Magic Johnson. In addition to hearing these speakers, we were able to participate in various breakout sessions to learn from other council members across the country. Some of our breakout sessions included racial equity training, economic mobility, school safety, and climate, and many more. These trainings gave us valuable insight and sparked meaningful conversation between myself and the other youth delegates that came. Connecting with elected officials was very informative as well. We were able to meet with the mayor and LaVonta Williams, James Clendenin. Dinner with the mayor was very fun. We enjoyed that as one of our social events. Secondly, we were able to connect with other youth leaders. We met with the Kansas youth delegates from Olathe. So it was good to hear what they're working on. And plus, you can't forget running into Magic Johnson. So overall, this experience was a valuable one that gave us insight on how to move forward in our council on specific issues, and we all developed a newfound bond. So.
I must admit, I'm a little jealous I didn't get a picture with Magic Johnson, but that's all right. At least one of us did. So in closing, you can see that the Mayor's Youth Council has undergone some significant changes from previous years that's left it looking a little different than it has in the past. And although there still remains some uncertainty over how these changes will affect the future of the council, I'm confident that the actions that staff and members of the council have taken will provide a new and needed balance of both stability and flexibility in the organization. It was evident from our time in Charlotte that Wichita's council stands out across the nation, really, in being an organization that takes direction from the newest generation of leaders and provides them with opportunities to assert their place in both Wichita's and the nation's future. So thank you for listening to our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Questions? Just want to say thank you to the representatives here from the Mayor's Youth Council. It's an aggressive structure that you've put in place, and it's good to see that you're tackling some big issues. And thank you, Ian. We enjoyed our time in National League of Cities also with the mayor and other members from the Youth Council. And so it was, I enjoy watching these folks as they address a wide variety of issues and very impressively doing it. So, Vice Mayor, did you have?
Yes. So the loss of Mirror Inc., was that because our annual sponsor, we lost our annual sponsorship for that?
I believe it's because it was funded through, that position was funded through a special liquor tax, and that funding was taken from that source and put somewhere else.
It was actually, it was reduced, and they decided that the reduced level was not sufficient to support their effort with the Mayor's Youth Council. So it was mostly financial, but also a little strategic in terms of pulling out of the program.
All right. Yes.
So related to that point then, I guess I'm wondering, are we going to seek additional funding to make sure that we're maintaining the Mayor's Youth Council on a regular basis, or are we seeking that?
We require outside funding every year in order to be able to have the program move forward, and we're anticipating that we'll solicit funds again, sponsorships, and the mayor always assists with that.
So we've been fortunate to have both Westar and Spirit that have stepped up and helped us with private funding, and then of course we utilize city support staff now instead of the Mirror support staff, and so we are literally funding part of it ourselves through our personnel, but both Westar and Spirit have been very generous in their financial support.
Absolutely. One more point, I as well was very happy and pleased that our Mayor's Youth Council could attend. I do have a question that puzzles me. Did you really know who Magic Johnson was? Mayor Gianna, did you really know who he was?
Matry did not, but Amy and I did. So it was really enjoyable. It was really good to hear about how he feels urbanization and everything can advance. So it was really insightful.
There are some that wonder why he spoke. Did you get even one thing out of his speech, especially to our youth?
The thing that spoke out to me most would be his analogy to a table when he was talking about urbanization and having people at the table that can relate to that subject and making sure that representation is equal for when these discussions are in place. So that was just something that really struck out for me. That was awesome.
Great. And it was really good to see Ian smile. But I would like to know, how were those three young ladies chosen over the rest of the Mayor's Youth Council? How were they chosen to travel, and is that how we always choose?
Yeah, so they apply. It's a competitive application. It's based primarily off of an essay that they write about what they would like to get out of the experience of going, what Mayor's Youth Council means to them, also what they would bring back from there and use to enrich the council. And that is how it was done last year, and I believe that's typically how it has gone.
Great, thank you.
You can tell from her questioning that Councilmember Williams is a former school teacher.
Well, I was just so interested in starting this 10 years ago when we started, and we went to NLC and we had no kids. So I'm very pleased with where we are now.
Rumor is she taught Magic Johnson in middle school.
That's okay, I can still apply for Miss Teen.
Anything else? All right, hey, thank you all.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Mayor, our last item has to do with our current fireworks ordinance. This is an issue that actually has been discussed for a number of years in terms of our regulations pertaining to fireworks around the 4th of July, how we are consistent and inconsistent with our neighbors and state law. And so we're going to bring to you a proposal that we teed up during the budget process regarding possible changes. Be glad to answer questions, but more importantly, want your feedback on how to go forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Fire Chief, Tammy Snow.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Mr. Manager, and Assistant City Managers. I get the privilege of talking about the fireworks ordinance for the City of Wichita. And with that, I'll provide you with some facts. Currently, the City of Wichita allows novelty items and fountains less than 6 feet high. But what the state law says is that they allow consumer fireworks, or in other words, the Class C fireworks, except for bottle rockets. So that's the only thing that they outlaw is just simply bottle rockets. Now, there's numerous jurisdictions, including the City of Wichita, that, there's numerous jurisdictions that basically mirror the state law. So the only thing they outlaw is basically the bottle rockets. Now, some jurisdictions have also moved to ban the sky lanterns. Those are the little tents that they light and they fly across the sky and land wherever they land after the fire goes out. So the City of Wichita has also banned those. This has placed the City of Wichita on what we call an island. And the reason I say that is because our ordinance is pretty restrictive, and the jurisdictions that surround the City of Wichita, since they mirror the state law, many of you have been witness to the phenomenal fireworks presentations or displays that are by looking out your back window or your front porch. The Wichita Fire Department and the Police Department are the officials that would actually issue citations in regards to the fireworks violations. But the way the ordinance is written is that we must observe the violation, the use, or the possession to actually issue a citation. We also cannot issue citations to minors or juveniles. Now, if we can get a parent or a guardian to step up, we can issue a citation to them. But the juvenile, if they were caught with it or caught using it, we would actually have to take them to juvie basically. And at that time, since it would just be a citation, we'd turn them over to a guardian. But that, just so you get a little perspective of that in regards to that. This becomes difficult for us to accomplish since we sit on an island, because people can just set the fireworks down on a public right-of-way and say, no, they weren't mine. And we do firework patrols during the times in which, the 9 days in which the state allows sales. But if any of you have been witness to that, when the big red fire truck starts down the street, everybody disperses and leaves things sitting there. So the way the ordinance is written, in the fact that we have to either observe it, with them having possession or using it, it eliminates us being able to enforce it. The 4th of July, besides just fireworks ordinance and our patrol in regards to those things, we also continue to mitigate what we were, our other task of public safety, as far as like medical calls and disturbances, accidents, and so forth. The city of Wichita does mirror the state in regards to dates of sales, the June 27th through July 5th, and majority of the surrounding jurisdictions around us also mirror that same dates of sales. As far as dates for discharge, they simply vary. They can vary anywhere from the 9 days or just to a single day on July 4th. Majority of jurisdictions around us mirror the full 9 days. Allowable times, the city of Wichita allows from 6 a.m. in the morning to midnight. Very few jurisdictions actually mirror this. They usually cut theirs off about 10:30, 11 o'clock. But again, those of you that have lived in the city of Wichita and you look out to the outskirts of the city or along the fringes, that 10:30, 11 o'clock isn't always adhered to either. So again, becomes a enforcement issue. In 2004, the city of Wichita had a tool called Active Wichita. It was a survey tool, and the Wichita Fire Department decided to participate in that tool to gather some information from the community in regards to how they felt about fireworks. And in fact, at the time, this particular survey had the largest number of participants at 576. So it was very well received by the community in regards to the numbers that participated. If you notice here, we asked how to address fireworks use, and 246 of the respondents, or about 42% of the people that participated, said that we should follow the state law. And then you can read down, and I'm not going to read each one of these to you, but they, tell you about how 99 of them asked for a ban on all the fireworks, and it gives you the information there, the data that was collected. In regards to the number of days of use, about 250 of them responded that they would like to use them 5 or more days. Again, about 43% of them. And another question, there was actually 6 questions that were asked or 5 questions that were asked on the survey. But a third question that was asked was about how important for the city of Wichita to match the surrounding areas or jurisdictions in regards to how we address fireworks. And about 126 of them, which is only about 22% of them, said that it was very important. But there was about 34% of them, if you include the 70 that said it was important in there. Other considerations as you make your decision is that the firework tents are used for fundraisers for nonprofits and for sports teams. And we've listed a few of them there. The Big Brothers, Big Sisters, North High School. There's for their sports teams, East, their ROTC, and Joy Animal Rescue. And these operators are, for these nonprofits, can generate anywhere between $3,000 to $8,000 for their programs. The cost of the permits, and this is kind of a misconception, a lot of people think those not-for-profits pay for those permits. The distributors are actually the ones that pay for the permits as you make your decisions, just so it doesn't affect the nonprofits. Typically, on an average, in the past 5 years, the city of Wichita has about 30 tents, right around 30 tents. In MABCD, the tent permit for the city of Wichita is $85. Where area fireworks tent permits average about $4,500. That's just an average. And in fact, we went back and did a little bit of research for 2017. And in 2017, the majority of the tents in the city of Wichita were charged $85, and then the remaining were charged $95 because it's $10 for each 1,000 square feet, additional square feet over the 800. In summary, the unrestricted sale of fireworks in the surrounding communities continues to lead to the large number of fireworks violations within the city and the significant difficulties that it places on the public safety entities, mainly fire and police, to try to enforce it. It's a big challenge for us. And with that, I'll entertain questions.
Questions, directions on what we want to do. The hard part is us being on an island, and when you get into many parts of the edges of the city, the lines are totally blurred between, the mazes and Wichita and Hayesville and Wichita, and there's tents set up that are in some instances, just across the city line, and it just gets too confusing. I think it's impossible for us to continue being totally on an island, separate ordinance from everyone else around us, and so we need to align ourselves with the surrounding area and the state of Kansas. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Tammy, let me say congratulations on becoming our chief of the fire department. We're very pleased. Another thing that I have to ask is, right now, what type of fines could you see if we were to actually charge someone for setting off illegal fireworks?
Let me, I need to defer to Stu to see what Chief Bevis in regards to, I'm not for sure what the amount of fines are.
Or have we ever collected any?
Yeah, well, in 2016, we put a conscientious effort. We dedicated one person to that. We ended up writing 8. It's just so hard, though.
It's very hard.
When we have identified vehicles, when we pull down the street, everybody runs.
Absolutely.
The way the ordinance is written, it's up to $2,500.
Okay.
It's set by the judge. And so it just varies on how the judge wants to set it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mayor.
Yes.
Quick question, Chief and Stu Bevers. The last table on this extra handout that we had shows a loss in dollars last year to Wichita of about $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
Is that typical, or is that an anomaly, or what do we average?
And one of the things I'd like to point out on that, the 2005, the majority of that money, or that loss in dollars, is from disposal of fireworks and not actual fireworks itself. It's improper disposal. For example, placing legal fireworks in dumpsters or illegal fireworks, depending on what they have, in plastic dumpsters up next to homes or out to the grass. So just FYI in regards to that. But I can give you the last 5 years, a summary of the last 5 years and dollar losses. In 2017, you had the number there. You have 2,555, 400. In 2016, we had $6,100 in fire losses. In 2015, we had 182,000. In 2014, we had 53,000. And in 2013, we had 53,000. And those are just general numbers. Like 2014 was 53,300. 2013 was 53,050. So just general roundup.
And it's largely related to putting those fires out from illegal or from improper disposal? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, in 2017, yes. All the losses are due to basically people disposing of their fireworks improperly. They stick them in a plastic bucket up next to the house and they're still smoldering. They go to bed and then their neighbor wakes up or somebody wakes up with the side of their house on fire.
I just want to clarify, these are not our costs. This is the property damage, the
Correct.
value of the property damage from the fire.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mayor. Chief, on the, I would kind of agree that we ought to just mirror what the mayor was saying, mirror the state law and try to tackle these issues at the state level would be easier for all of us. But does the state have on your third slide, about allowable times, that ours varies and others around us vary? Does the state have a law on their allowance? They do the days, but they don't.
I believe that's just left up to the jurisdiction, and we've left ours at that. I think it also mirrors some of the nuisance laws as well, and that's why we have it cut off at midnight.
My one thought is that I don't understand why if we were going to mirror the state law, I still don't like the fact that we allow it to be shot off on July 5th, the day after. Or maybe I know when it goes to midnight, July 4th, or probably 1 in the morning, July 4th, whatever, but why we do an extra day.
In some instances, that's been shared with us. It's because of if there's inclement weather, that it's already in the law to where they can have that extra day. If the 4th it's pouring rain and they've bought all those fireworks, they can shoot them off on the 5th. I think that's one of the reasons it also falls, because sometimes the way the days fall as well.
Right, if the 4th is on a Friday for the weekend. All right, I understand.
Okay.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. I'm sure I'm in the minority on this, but I'm still going to speak my mind. I am not an advocate for fireworks. I think we have too many fireworks as it is. I'm not at all in favor of expanding it. Using the logic that we can't enforce an ordinance, I think is not logic at all. There are lots of laws we find difficult to enforce, but yet we do it anyway. The problem with having to observe people is in an ordinance that could also be changed. That's a technicality that we could change. We could change it to if they're on somebody's property. The whole business about traveling around in fire trucks, I don't think we have to do it in fire trucks. Both police and fire could use fleet vehicles or other vehicles to do that kind of thing. And I know you've been asked to present this, and I appreciate that. And so this is not a personal issue. It's just I've never supported fireworks. Every time fireworks season rolls around, you know, my inbox fills up. I know my successor's inbox will fill up with fireworks complaints. And so I would be doing a huge disservice to the hundreds of people that have written to me over the past 8 years about our existing fireworks, let alone expanding it to allow everything. So, thank you.
And I think it's going to mirror your survey. You're going to find there's a large number of people that don't want fireworks, and you're going to find there's a large number of people that want it to be expanded. So as many people that have filled up her inbox that says no fireworks, you can have that many plus that will say, let's get on the same page with the state and their surrounding areas. So.
Well, and if I could interject as well, you referenced like Mays and Hayesville, but out in the outskirts of District 2, it butts right up to, for instance, Crestview is not incorporated in our city, and they've got stuff going all around, and then Andover abuts right up to the city. All their 159th, all the tents are there selling it, and they're blasting away, and our citizens are upset, but it's stuff that's going on
right
totally
on
around them.
Right.
And I try to tell them that too, and you know, so they send a message to Andover or Crestview or, you know, adjoining areas or unincorporated areas, which is the county area. So it's difficult, very
Absolutely.
difficult.
Yes.
So I'm not inherently against fireworks. Love fireworks. Do them. I wish I could do them now. It's kind of expensive these days to do it like a lot of people do, but I understand a lot of the logic that's being talked about today, but there is an element of people that do respect the law and do follow the law. And if we get rid of our restrictions on fireworks, it is going to make it worse in the city of Wichita. Because I will tell you, I know so many people that don't do them inside our city and leave to do those fireworks. And so it will make it worse for some of our seniors especially, who are scared to death with some of the fireworks that actually rattle your windows and dishes fall off the shelves, and it really, really concerns me that that's going to be the case, but even worse. Just knowing that there is an element of people that do respect our laws, this is going to make it very, very difficult, I believe. So, for the quality of life in some of our neighborhoods for our seniors. So, I have a difficult time with this. I think that Councilmember Miller brings up some good points about vehicles and about how we address our ordinances that allow for enforcing our law. Our law makes itself very unenforceable. And so I just think we should think twice about doing this. That's all.
Anything else?
So do you want us to bring ordinance change forward?
I think we bring an ordinance change forward.
Okay. All right.
We'll get to vote on it at the bench.
Right.
But I think we bring an ordinance change forward. We can have the discussion at the bench and listen to arguments and move it forward.
Okay. Since we're getting closer to the holiday season, probably would, well, this council heard this. We'll try to get something scheduled this month, or the month of December. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that concludes the workshop. All right. We're finished.